Welcome back everyone, Jonathan here in the Making a Pong Unity course. So far we've created a game scene for our Pong, but it's not really a game yet because nothing is actually moving. So in this video we're going to start moving the player paddle around, which is this one here on the right. Now to do this we're going to be using something called vector 3 variables. And just to briefly go over those with you, vector 3 variables are essentially what we use whenever we're dealing with movement in Unity. So like a float, they use decimal places, but they're basically like a container for 3 variables. And those 3 variables always relate to the x, y, and z coordinates, which if you'll remember from your high school math classes have to do with where things are located. Now, even though we don't technically use z in 2D games, which is depth, vector 3 variables are still required for movement because we do have a camera and there is a 3D play space even though we're dealing with 2D. It's kind of confusing, so just nod your head and agree with it. And the way we declare vector 3 variables is shown below. However, Unity has a built-in function for making moving objects pretty easy. At least when we're dealing with non-physics related movement. So there is an easier way to do that, and I'm going to show you how to start moving your paddle right now. Okay, so let's go into Unity, and well, actually before we start creating our next script, I'm going to show you one thing here. I re-imported the Pong assets so the paddles are facing vertically. And the reason I did this is because I tested this video out beforehand and I realized when I rotated these paddles around here, basically what happened was X became up and down and Y became left and right, and that just made things unnecessarily confusing. So I just re-imported them the right way with the paddles facing vertically, so now X means left and right and Y means up and down. It's just far less confusing for everyone involved that way. You can use the paddles the other way, but why make things unnecessarily difficult on yourself? So if you already got these paddles, I put these ones in Dropbox, so I got rid of the other ones, so you might have already got these, in which case you're good to go. If not, you probably just want to get some paddles that are facing vertically in the first place. So let's go to our player paddle, and we're going to add a component. And the way you can add a script through this drop-down list is just by going to the bottom here and clicking New Script, and then you can type a name for your script. Now in this case, I'm going to call this Player Paddle, and hit enter, and immediately that's going to show up in my main assets folder. So I'm just going to drag that and drop that into my scripts folder down here. And now I'm going to double click player paddle to open it. So the first thing we're going to do here is underneath public class we're going to declare a public float, and we're going to call it speed and put a semicolon right at the end. Now if you hit control, well actually first of all I'm going to give it a default value of 2, and if you're not putting a decimal place after it you don't need to put a letter F. But let's just take a look back in Unity what that public means. So if we go back here to our player script, we're going to see this shows up here under the inspector view where we can actually change this value right here. Now it shows up as a 2 because I gave it a default value of 2 in the script, but if I change this here to like 5 or something, it will still say 2 in the script. So I just gave it a default value just in case we forget to set it. Now if we go back into Unity, whenever we're dealing with movement, we're not just dealing with vector 3s, but we're also going to be dealing with this update function. So what we're going to want to do is contain our movement within an if statement. So here we're just going to say if if input.getKey, and what we're going to say here is just get key in this place. Now if you remember from the console Pong, the difference between get key and get key down is get key lets you repeatedly perform a command by holding a button, where get key down only lets the first input of that button count. So if I had get key down, I would press down arrow and it would not continue. And I can show you that difference. We're just going to say if input.getKey, open bracket, key code dot up arrow, and now 2 closing brackets because we have 2 opening brackets, open squiggly bracket, close squiggly brackets, and in here I'm just going to say move player up, and I'm going to call this as a new method, which we haven't created yet. And underneath here, now I'm going to create this and call void move player up, open close bracket, open close squiggly brackets. Now this is where Unity makes our lives kind of easy, because what they have done here is they've already created vector3 variables that allow us to move our players. So this is what we have to do. We have to manipulate our player's transform. So we're going to start this off by saying transform.position. Now just to show you what this transform is here, if we go back into Unity, transform relates to the stuff in the inspector that shows up here in the very upper right corner that deals with our position, our rotation, and our scale. So when we say transform, we're telling Unity to look at the transform component that this script is attached to, and then we're saying dot position, so we're saying we want to manipulate the position of the transform. Now, next, we want to say the transform.position plus equals, and the plus equals is essentially the same thing as taking away this plus and just putting transform.position again on the other side. So we're basically, it's a short form way of saying increment yourself. So transform.position plus equals vector3 dot up. And now we're going to say times speed, so we want it to move up at the float value we gave our speed. And then there's one more thing you have to do here, and you have to say times time dot delta time. And this has to do with frame rates and making sure that we're going to be moving at basically the same speed no matter how fast or how slow our computer is, because, well, different processors and graphics cards can greatly influence how fast or slowly things would be moving otherwise. So time.delta time is just Unity's way of evening things out no matter the power of your machine. So now I'm going to hit Control Save, and we're going to go back into Unity, and we're going to hit play. And let's take a look and see what happens if we hold up. And look at that, we have some movement. Now you can see there's a problem here, and we're going to take care of that in the next video, is that if we look at our scene view, the paddle just keeps going infinitely, and well, we don't want that to happen. We want the paddle to stay within our scene, but it is moving up, so that's pretty cool. And the other thing I notice is that 2 is probably a little bit too slow, so if we change that up to maybe 7 or so and give that another try, okay, so that's more reasonable. Now we can't move down yet, and I'm going to actually say here's a challenge for you, and let's make that your job. Can you make the player move down when you hit the down arrow? So I've already shown you how to move the player up. Let's see if you can pause the video and now move the player down on your own. So pause the video and give that a go. Okay, welcome back. How do you do? If you need any help, that's okay. That's what I'm here for. Let's go ahead and make the player move down. So very simply, we're going to say here, else if input.getKey, single opening bracket, key code dot down arrow, 2 close brackets, open squiggly, close squiggly, and now we're going to say move player down. And we can basically just copy this and change a couple of words here and there. And we can say move player down, transform.position, plus equals vector3 dot down. And that should pretty much do the trick. Let's take another look. Okay, this is what I was talking about here. I changed this in play mode, so it defaulted back to normal. So I'm just going to change that back up to 7 again, maybe 7.5. And now let's start again. And we can see that that is great. We can, in fact, move our paddle up and down. We can move it up and down infinitely. But like I said, we'll take care of that in the next video. We have some movement. We've done our first in-game coding in Unity. So how do you feel? Do you have any questions? Did this all make sense? I'd love to hear. Show me what you've done, and I'll see you in the next video.